Good evening, and welcome to the Yes Tales Story Channel. This evening, we will meet a speaking beetle whose show of gratitude goes slightly wrong. In this story from L. Frank Baum. My name is Jess, and I'm your host this evening. I'm here to tell you stories from all over the world. Some famous, some forgotten. And when the story finishes, the sound of the rain keeps playing, helping you fall into a soothing sleep. If you want to hear more stories, which you might not have heard otherwise, feel free to subscribe or give us a like. But for now, make sure you're warm and snug. Clear your mind from any worries and take a deep breath. Let's begin. Not that long ago, a man and his wife lived on a stony, barren farm in New England. They were sober, honest people who worked hard from early morning until dark in order to secure a scanty living from their poor land. Their house, a small one-story building, stood on the side of a steep hill, and around it lay a thick layer of stones, making it hard for anything green to grow from the ground. At the foot of the hill, a quarter of a mile from the house by the winding path, was a small brook, and the woman was obliged to go there for water and to carry it up the hill to the house. This was a tedious task, and this, with the other hard work that fell to her share, had made her gaunt and bent and lean. Yet she never complained, but quietly and faithfully performed her duties, doing the housework, carrying the water, and helping her husband farm the few crops that grew on the best part of their land. One day, as she walked down the path to the brook, her big shoes scattering the pebbles right and left, she noticed a large beetle lying upon its back and struggling hard with its little legs to turn over, to make its feet touch the ground again. The woman, who had a kind heart, reached down and gently turned the beetle with her finger. At once it scampered from the path, and she carried on to the brook. The next day, as she came for water, she was surprised to see the beetle again lying on its back, struggling helplessly to turn over. Once more, the woman stopped and helped him back on his feet, and then, as she stooped over the tiny creature, she heard a small voice say, "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for saving me." Half startled at hearing a beetle speak in her own language, the woman took a step back and exclaimed, "Oh heavens! Surely you can't talk like humans." Then, recovering from her shock, she bent down over the beetle again, who answered her. "Why shouldn't I talk if I have something to say?" "'Cause you're a bug," replied the woman. "That is true, and you saved my life, saved me from my enemies, the sparrows. And this is the second time that you've come to my assistance, so I owe you a debt of gratitude. Bugs value their lives just as much as humans do, and I am a more important creature than you, in your ignorance, I suppose. But tell me, why do you come each day to the brook?" "For water," she answered, staring stupidly down at the talking beetle. "Isn't it hard work?" the creature inquired. "Yes, but there's no water on the hill," she said. "Then dig a well and put a pump in it," replied the beetle. The woman shook her head. "My husband tried once, but there was no water," she said sadly. "Try it again," commanded the beetle, "and in return for your kindness to me, I will make this promise. If you do not get water from the well, you will get something more precious to you. I must go now, but don't forget, dig a well." And then, without pausing to say goodbye, it ran swiftly away and was lost among the stones. The woman returned to the house much perplexed by what the beetle had said, and when her husband came in from his work, she told him the whole story. The poor man thought deeply for a time and then said, "There may be truth in what the bug told you. If a beetle can speak, there must be magic in the world yet. And if there is such a thing as magic, we may just get water from the well. The pump I bought to use in the well, which proved to be dry, is still in the barn. And the only expense in following the talking bug's advice will be the labor of digging the hole. And I'm used to labor, so I will dig the well." Next day he started digging and dug so far down into the ground that he could hardly reach the top to climb out again, but not a drop of water was found. "Perhaps you didn't dig deep enough," his wife said. So the following day he made a long ladder, which he put into the hole, and then he dug and dug and dug, until the top of the ladder barely reached the top of the hole, but there was still no water. When the woman went to the brook again with her bucket, she saw the beetle sitting upon the stone beside her path, so she stopped and said, "My husband has dug the well, but there is no water." "Did he put the pump in the well?" asked the beetle. "No," she answered. "Then do as I said, use the pump, and if you do not get water, I promise you something even more precious." The beetle then swiftly slid from the stone and disappeared. The woman went back to the house and told her husband what the bug had said this time. "Well," replied the simple fellow, "there is no harm in trying." So he got the pump from the barn and placed it in the well, and then he took hold of the handle and began to pump, while his wife stood by to watch what would happen. No water came, but after a few moments a gold piece dropped from the spout of the pump, and then another and another, until several handfuls of gold lay in a little heap on the ground. The man stopped pumping and ran to help his wife gather the gold pieces into her apron, but their hands trembled so greatly from excitement and joy that they could barely pick up the sparkling coins. Finally, she gathered them close to her bosom, and together they ran back to the house, where they emptied the precious gold on the table and counted the pieces. All were stamped with the design of the United States Mint and were worth $5 each. Some were worn and somewhat discolored from use, while others seemed bright and new, as if they had barely been handled. When they added up the value of the gold pieces, they found them to be worth $300. Suddenly the woman spoke. The beetle spoke the truth when he said we would get something more precious than water from the well. But you must go and remove the handle from the pump, in case anyone comes this way and discovers our secret. So the man ran to the pump and removed the handle, which he carried to the house and hid underneath the bed. They hardly slept a wink that night, lying awake, thinking of their good fortune and what they should do with their stash of yellow gold. In all their former lives they had never possessed more than a few dollars at a time, and now the cracked teapot was nearly full of gold coins. The following day was Sunday, but they got up early and ran to see if their treasure was safe. There it was, heaped snugly within the teapot, and they were so willing to feast their eyes upon it that a long time passed before the man could drag himself away from it to build the fire, or the woman to cook the breakfast. While they ate their simple meal, the woman said, "We will go to church today and give thanks for the riches that have come to us so suddenly, and I will give the pastor one of the gold pieces." "It's well enough to go to church," replied her husband, "and also to give thanks. But in the night I decided how we will spend all our money, so there will be none left for the pastor." "We can pump more," said the woman. "Maybe so," he answered cautiously. "What we have we can depend upon, but who knows if there's more in the well?" "Then go and find out," she replied, "for I'm anxious to give something to the pastor, who is a poor and deserving man." So the man went and got the pump handle from beneath the bed and left for the pump, where he fitted it in place again. Then he placed a large wooden bucket under the spout and began to pump. To their joy, the gold pieces soon began flowing into the bucket, and seeing it about to run over the brim, the woman brought another bucket. But now the stream suddenly stopped, and the man said cheerfully, "That's enough for today. We've added greatly to our treasure, and the pastor shall have his gold piece. And I might actually put a coin in the contribution box as well." Then, because the teapot would hold no more gold, the farmer emptied the bucket into the wood box, covering the money with dried leaves and twigs, so that no one would suspect what lay hidden underneath. Then they dressed themselves in their best clothing and started their walk to the church, each taking a bright gold piece from the teapot as a gift to the pastor. Over the hill and down into the valley beyond they walked, feeling so happy and light-hearted that they did not mind the distance at all. At last they came to the small country church and entered just as the services began. Being proud of their wealth and of the gifts they had brought for the pastor, they could barely wait for the moment when the deacon passed the contribution box. Finally the time came, and the farmer held out his hand high over the box and dropped the gold piece so that all the congregation could see what he had given. The woman did the same, feeling very important and happy at being able to give the good pastor so much. The pastor, watching from the pulpit, could see the gold drop into the box and could hardly believe his eyes. But when the box was placed upon his desk, there were 2 gold pieces, and he was so surprised that he nearly forgot his sermon. As the congregation were leaving the church at the end of the services, the good man stopped the farmer and his wife and asked, "Where did you get so much gold?" The woman gladly told him how she had rescued the beetle, and how in return they had been rewarded with a wonderful pump. The pastor listened very seriously, and when the story finished, he said, "According to tradition, strange things happened in this world ages ago, and now I find that strange things may also happen today. For according to your tale, you have found a beetle that can speak, and also has the power to bestow great wealth upon you." Then he looked carefully at the gold pieces and continued, "Either this money is fairy gold, or it is genuine metal, stamped at the mint of the United States government. If it is fairy gold, it will disappear within 24 hours, and will therefore do no one any good. If it is real money, then your beetle must have robbed someone of the gold and placed it in your well, for all money belongs to someone, and if you haven't obtained it honestly, but have come by it in the mysterious way that you mention, it was surely taken from people who owned it without their consent. Where else could real money come from?" The farmer and his wife were confused by this statement and looked guiltily at each other, for they were honest people who didn't wish to wrong anyone. "So you think the beetle stole the money?" asked the woman. "By his magic powers, he probably took it from its rightful owners. Even bugs that can speak have no consciousness and cannot tell the difference between right and wrong. With a desire to reward you for your kindness, the beetle took the money you pumped from the well from its lawful owners." "Perhaps it really is fairy gold," suggested the husband. "If so, we must go to the town and spend the money before it disappears." "That would be wrong," answered the pastor, "for then the merchants would neither have money nor goods. To give them fairy gold would be to rob them." "But then what should we do?" asked the poor woman, wringing her hands with grief and disappointment. "Go home and wait until tomorrow. If the gold is still in your possession, it is real money and not fairy gold. But if it is real money, you must try to restore it to its rightful owners. Take also these pieces that you have given to me, for I cannot accept gold that is not honestly obtained." The poor people returned to their home, greatly disturbed and sad by what they had heard. Another sleepless night passed, and on Monday morning they got up at daylight and ran to see if the gold was still visible. "It is real money after all," cried the man, "for not a single piece has disappeared." When the woman went to the brook that day, she looked for the beetle, and sure enough, there he sat on a flat stone. "Are you happy now?" asked the beetle, as the woman paused before him. "We are very unhappy," she answered, "for although you've given us plenty of gold, our good pastor says it must belong to someone else, and that you stole it to reward us." "Your pastor may be a good man," returned the beetle, with some indignation, "but he is certainly not very wise. Nevertheless, if you do not want the gold, I can take it from you as easily as I gave it." "But we do want it," cried the woman fearfully. "That is," she added, "if it was obtained honestly." "It is not stolen," replied the beetle sulkily, "and it belongs to no one but yourselves. When you saved my life, I thought about how I could reward you, and knowing you to be poor, I decided gold would make you happier than anything else. You must know," he continued, "that although I appear so small and insignificant, I am really king of all the insects, and my people obey my slightest wish. Living, as they do, close to the ground, the insects often come across gold and other pieces of money which have been lost and fallen into cracks or crevices, or become covered with earth or hidden by grass or weeds. Whenever my people find money in this way, they report the fact to me, but I always let it lie, as it is of no use to an insect. So you see, when I decided to give you gold, I knew just where to find it, without robbing any of your fellow creatures. I then immediately sent thousands of insects in every direction to bring the pieces of lost gold to this hill. It cost my people several days of hard labor, as you can imagine. But by the time your husband had finished the well, the gold began to arrive from all parts of the country. And during the night, my subjects dumped it all into the well, so you can use it with a clear conscience, knowing that you have wronged no one." This explanation delighted the woman, and when she returned to the house and reported what the beetle had said, her husband was overjoyed as well. So they took a few of the gold pieces and went to the town to purchase provisions and clothing and many things they were in dire need of. But they were so proud of their newly acquired wealth that they made no effort to conceal it. They wanted everyone to know they had money, and so it was no wonder that when some of the wicked men in the village saw the gold, they wanted it for themselves. "If they spend this money so freely," whispered one to another, "there must be a great stash of gold in their home." "That is true," was the answer. "Let's hurry over there before they return and ransack the house." So they left the village and hurried over to the farm on the hill, where they broke down the door and turned everything topsy-turvy until they had discovered the gold in the wood box and the teapot. It didn't take them long to make this into bundles, which they slung upon their backs and carried off. And it was probably because they were in such a great hurry that they didn't stop to put the house back in order again. Shortly thereafter, the good woman and her husband came up the hill from the village with their arms full of parcels, followed by a crowd of small boys who had been hired to help carry the purchases. Then followed others, youngsters and country louts, attracted by the wealth and lavishness of the pair, who from simple curiosity trailed along behind them like the tail of a comet, and helped swell the concourse into a triumphal procession. Last of all came Guggins, the shopkeeper, carrying with much tenderness a new silk dress that was to be paid for when they reached the house, as all the money they had taken to the village had been lavishly expended. The farmer, who had formerly been a modest man, was now so swelled with pride that he tipped the rim of his hat over his left ear and smoked a big cigar that was fast making him ill. His wife strutted beside him like a peacock, thoroughly enjoying the homage and respect her wealth had won from those who formerly deigned not to notice her, and glancing from time to time at the admiring procession at the rear. But alas for their newborn pride! When they reached the farmhouse, they found the door broken in, the furniture strewn in all directions, and their treasure stolen to the very last gold piece. The crowd grinned and made rude remarks of a personal nature, and Guggins, the shopkeeper, loudly demanded the money for the silk dress he had brought. The woman whispered to her husband to run and pump some more gold while she kept the crowd quiet, and he obeyed quickly. But after a few moments, he returned with a white face to tell her that the pump was dry, and not a gold piece could now be coaxed from the spout. The procession marched back to the village, laughing and jeering at the farmer and his wife, who had pretended to be so rich, and some of the boys were naughty enough to throw stones at the house from the top of the hill. Mr. Guggins carried away his dress after severely scolding the woman for deceiving him, and when the couple finally found themselves alone, their pride had turned to humiliation and their joy to bitter grief. Just before sundown, the woman dried her eyes, and having resumed to her ordinary attire, went to the brook for water. When she came to the flat stone, she saw the Beetle King sitting on top of it. "The well is dry," she cried out angrily. "Yes," answered the beetle calmly. "You have pumped all the gold my people could find from it." "But we are now ruined," said the woman, sitting down on the path beginning to weep, "for robbers have stolen every penny." "I'm sorry," replied the beetle, "but it is your own fault. Had you not made such a great show of your wealth, no one would have suspected that you possessed the treasure, or thought to rob you. As it is, you have merely lost the gold which others had lost before you, and it will probably be lost many times more before the world comes to an end." "But what are we to do now?" she asked. "What did you do before I gave you the money?" "We worked from morning till night," she said. "Then you still have your work," remarked the beetle calmly. "No one will ever try to rob you of that, of course." And then he slid from the stone and disappeared for the last time. This story should teach us to accept good fortune with a humble heart and to use it in moderation. For if the farmer and his wife could have resisted the temptation to show off their wealth so ostentatiously, they might still have kept it to this very day.